So yeah, to begin with, I've been reading the book, and it's very useful. I'm genuinely like surprised by how useful it is. Genuinely I approached it with a little bit of skepticism, which is like a journalistic thing to do. You would just not take things at sort of face value. You wouldn't judge a book by the cover or the names of the people associated with it. So you want to like get into it, and I have been getting into it, and I genuinely think that you guys have sort of hit on something. I'm very impressed by a few things. We'll come to that in the course of the interview. But first, one thing I wanted to say right away is that I think the book is very kind. It has a very kind tone, and I think that that's very necessary, because you don't want people talking down to you or be sort of judgy, because sort of all of us are in this whole thing. I mean, we are all guilty of these things.
Including the both of us. I just hope that we don't come across as some sort of saints or whatever. We're struggling,
No.
which is why we wrote this book.
Not at all. No, not at all. I think it's very humane, and like genuinely from a good place. You can make out that it comes from a good place.
A lot of people just blame companies or this and that, and or you can say, you're the problem. You have no self-control. You are weak. Really, it's none of these things. We are what we are, and with all our weaknesses, strengths, everything, we need to figure out a way to do this, because I think especially now the third wave coming, we are to our devices, and therefore to believe that we can have a life without technology, I think is impractical, and therefore we have to find a way to do things better, not
Right.
and with what we have, and we have to accept that we're human beings with our. Therefore, we need to come up with some systems to create so that we can carve out different models of working and so on. So it was really very practical. How do we do it, and not judgmental about people or their frailties?
There's a huge amount of psychology that is part of the book, right? I mean, you guys have clearly like gone through studies, you've read other books, like and so much of it is related to psychology, right? Like why we procrastinate, why we why are we unable to retrieve things from our memory, that sort of thing. So but both of you, of course, like don't have a background in psychology as such. So how did you go about that process, like learning? How much did you know about psychology to begin with, and what was the learning process like?
I think a lot of the credit for that, Shravanti, goes to Tanuj. Tanuj is a left brain, right brain kind of a guy. He's a guy who started programming at the age of 11. So he's obviously, and he went to IIT and all that. So obviously he has that part of the brain. But he's also done a course in liberal arts,
Right,
at Yoga. So,
I
he's
saw
one of
that,
the
yeah.
live brain. So I think a lot of the credit goes to him. And of course, I've had to devise my own techniques of surviving in this torrent of tsunami of information. So we found both of us actually had similar approaches, though mine is much simpler than his, in the sense
Okay.
I just don't do a lot of things, but that mine is not practical as a way for everyone. So we had to come up with something which is actually
Right.
practical for.
I want to hear from Tanuj, like what was that research that you put in, like to understand the, because psychology is not an easy subject. I mean, like, how did you sort of,
I think thank you so much for that. First of all, seeing that and appreciating that is very kind of you. I think, look, once you really get into the sort of trying to learn about a subject or learn about any question in life, right? The question here for us is, how do we really live with our technology, right? How do we spend time better? You take any question and you start asking and start unpeeling the layers, you are going to get to a place where you have to sort of confront the sort of boundaries of knowledge, right? Where
Right.
research and science comes up.
Right.
And I think if you're just not intimidated by it, you start realizing that, it's sort of background. Obviously, I don't think I can reach conclusions or do new research in science. I'm humble enough to accept that. But at the same time, to be a student of anything is genuinely just, it's out there for everyone to see. This is one of the success stories of the internet. Let's not forget
Exactly.
it.
Yeah, I was just going to say that this is one of the ways in which the internet is good for us. Yeah.
It's good for us, right? Nandan was kind enough to acknowledge that I started programming at 11. But that's because my parents did this thing that, which is that they bought me a computer and an internet connection and they left me alone, right? Those are the key ingredients to success. If you ask me, for a child to learn on their own, but the habit of learning that I have gotten from the internet, for not stopping curiosity because self-limiting belief. I don't think about if I'm a psychologist or not. I just ask a question and the internet answers.
Right. Yeah. So, just coming back to the genesis of the book, I read the tweet thread Nandan had posted about the walks in the park, which sort of led to the ideation for this book. If you could tell me a little bit more about that, like.
We were walking in the park. I was talking about how walking in the park with him is so much better than doing a Zoom call. Ironical thing to say on a Zoom call. And, just on a chance question, I asked him, how do you switch off, right? Like, how do you turn off? So he said some things, we exchanged emails, and genuinely that is how the book came about. And, and that probably goes back to what you were saying earlier, right? Like we approach this not as experts or gurus, but as genuinely
people who were seeking those answers.
And then when we saw that we have something in common and that there is a method, then we decided to sort of go ask everybody else. We did this authentic exercise of asking people, how do you deal with it? What do you do? What are your methods? Then, so sort of the curiosity led us to this book, right? Being able to answer the question. And the second thing that Nandan said is very important is that just want to emphasize that the idea is Nandan, like, forget me, I'm more recent to this, but Nandan's been working on this question that if you have something as powerful as technology, how do you use it for the public good? How do you use it for the benefit of everybody? Right? And you have a bunch of things in that range that have come in India in the last 10 years.
Right.
So he mentions it often.
We are aware of one or two of those things. Yeah.
There's Aadhaar, of course, but UPI, for example, right?
UPI,
like, people come from
the whole India
come from abroad in India. They are amazed. People in the US, UK, etc., are amazed by how good payments are here, and that's because instead of it being made, to become $1 billion corporation, to have like a successful IPO or this or that, it was made for the public good. And I think it's time that now that we've proven it, we start talking about it. And these two ideas, just to say, these two ideas are connected, like Nandan was saying, right? This
also what happened, the last two books I wrote were all big policy books, imagining rebooting India with Viral. And I realized that, and Tanuj also said, look, we shouldn't just do a big policy book because that's okay. I mean, how many whereas we said if we can do something where individuals can benefit, and even if they pick up 3-4 ideas from this book which they implement in their digital life, if that makes it better, then we have added value. And use that to also articulate what the bigger picture of how it can be changed. So that's why we both have that individual section and the collective section.
Well, I hadn't made that connection actually. Like, that's interesting to sort of, see the connection between your earlier, like both of you have been working with iSpirit and things like that. So the connection between that and this, like that's interesting. You don't see this only as like one book, right? I mean, from what I understand from, you have a website, bigfulness.com, and, it has like a Twitter handle. So you do see it as an ongoing engagement or like a framework that you're creating?
See, what's happening is we have dramatically increased the penetration of technology right now, from no one having a phone now to 500 million people having a smartphone. This digital hygiene part of it has never been talked about.
Yeah, exactly.
And, our hope is that if this book enables people to sort of step outside themselves and see what is happening and how they could possibly do things better. And if a lot of people adopt these practices, that will be I think a good contribution, because digital hygiene is as important as any other hygiene.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, what I meant to ask is, sorry, go on.
I'd like to compliment Nandan's answer there. He's talking about obviously digitalizing individual, but I think there's one thing about the book that we've been sort of very focused on, which comes from Nandan. Honestly, like this is his entire thing in the book, is that look, people kind of lose their marbles when they talk about technology companies and like what's responsible, who's responsible, right? We tend to go very aggressive. We tend to be like, okay, everything is Facebook's fault, right? Which completely railroads that conversation. Because Facebook is never going to admit it's its fault, whatever, and to some extent, not everything is their fault, right? And the same on the other side. If we say that it's all individuals, if you stop using social media, why are you on it? If it's so much, both these ideas are wrong, right? So a non-hype, non-blaming conversation on how to actually fix this thing. That is, I think, part 3 of the book, which is honestly come really from Nandan and his ideas, and he's not talking about it for that reason. Okay. But I think that conversation to me resonated, right? That the idea that how do we talk about these things to actually cause change without making it into one more partisan political issue that we will never get.
And we've had those books like the Instagram book that came out I think last year or 2 years ago, that whole attention economy, like talking about that. Gia Tolentino has written fantastically about social media and how it that crazy, the dark mirror.
Trick Mirror. Trick Mirror. Oh man, she's so good.
So good. I love that book. But I think what you guys are trying to do is to take that forward and see like, okay, so we know that this problem exists. Now, how do we solve it?
Yes. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. I think at heart we are problem solvers. We are not in the blame. We are not in the
that you can leave to journalists. We do, and I think that's an important role. But
what's that?
To point out the problems. That is like...
I'm not disputing that pointing out problems is not a big thing. I'm saying we intuitively problem-solving kind of people.
Right.
And therefore, the book has that sort of genre, that tone about it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I wanted to ask actually, so I saw that I felt that, the book kind of brings in many strands of thoughts together, like mindfulness definitely is, a big part of it, the whole philosophy of mindfulness. And then, there are other, strands of thought that you guys have kind of taken from the flow theory, for instance, or sports psychology. How did all these come together and do you think that you've managed to like sort of weave them together and create one very coherent, cohesive sort of a philosophy?
Well, let me start and then I'll hand over to I think the thing about this technology is the very ease with which you can use it is also you can just switch context and you can keep going back and forth, and then you lose the train of thought and it takes time to recover and all that. And I think the key discovery which we had was that actually there are 3 modes of operation that we have, which is the create mode, the curate mode, and the communicate mode. And those are 3 different sort of mindsets you have to be. And this is where, my approach to this has been, and this was before the book was done, but my approach to this was actually we have 3 different devices for this.
Okay.
It's a hardware approach to life. So all my create mode is done on my laptop. So I know that when I'm at my laptop, and I always keep my laptop in the same place with the same, environment, so that I know that this is the time when I'm doing deep thinking work, writing articles. So that's my create mode.
Right.
And the only I do is calls and messages. I don't use any other products because I need to always reply to people, and if I have too many communication products, then I'll get overwhelmed by that. So, but I just stick to my messaging and my phone calls. So I don't use any Instagram or
messaging as in like WhatsApp messaging or
no, I don't use WhatsApp.
SMS.
Only SMS. Right. So if you want to communicate with me, you SMS, text me or call me. That's it. And for curate mode, I have an iPad where I have a lot of things I subscribe to. I read them and whenever I have a chance. So I've done it by actually physically having devices. So when I pick up that device, my mind automatically switches into that mode.
That mode. Right.
But when you have only one device, you can't do that, right? I have the luxury of having 3 devices. If you have only one device. So I think the beauty of what Tanuj has done is find that for each of these modes, what should be the environment? How do you, for example, you block notification when you're in create mode. You need to have separate email IDs for your, for your junk mail or for utility mail. So actually using software and creating multiple identities or multiple profiles, how do you create different sort of sanctuaries?
Right.
So you go into that area, you are mentally in that area.
Right.
Otherwise, if you don't do this and you're on your phone and suddenly you get a text message or you get a notification from WhatsApp, or somebody writes some Twitter or something, and suddenly, instead of doing what you're doing, you get distracted.
Absolutely.
So this is a problem so we are trying to solve it so that you actually can create these worlds and how to write down things. It's very practical stuff.
I've seen that. I've been through those chapters. I like the distinction between, the desktop and downloads and documents. And I've never thought of it that way. I think intuitively we all kind of tend to do that. But yeah, it's good to have it sort of, just clearly out there. That whole, like the stuff that you're working on now goes on your desktop, and the downloads is kind of your working memory.
Yeah.
And how you do filing, again, very important. I have files on my laptop that go back 20 years and I can fish out anything from anything I did. And for example, when I went to work at the UIDAI in 2009, the first thing I did was create folders.
Right.
So I structured my work into 20 folders, and then after that, everything was about putting that into the right folder, and I closed my mind on that topic. So all these things to learn, and also the zero inbox kind of philosophy. Get rid of, don't keep anything pending, either delegate it or delete it or reply to it or whatever. So I think these are all simple hygiene issues, but if we don't follow them, then we can get very quickly overwhelmed by technology.
Right.
So, Shravan, your question was coherent. I wanted to just say, you tell us. Yeah, I mean, we are hoping that it is coherent. If I had to underline one word, it's in the subtitle itself. It is calm, right? This is what we connected on Nandan and I. That all our systems, whether it is through Nandan having a laptop only for work, an iPad only for entertainment, and a phone only to talk to people, right? Not to check news quickly or Twitter quickly or whatever. Like whenever you think about why is he doing that, or why I structured in slightly more complex, but like essentially the same thing, it's because we're all, at least the both of us, were optimizing for calm, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't want to be...
And efficiency, right? I mean, that's also part of it.
I mean, I think that efficiency is this sort of...
But also not feeling overwhelmed and frazzled.
Right, yeah.
The thing is, when there's all this tsunami of stuff coming, then you feel overwhelmed. I see many people just sort of succumbing under the weight of all this. So how do you keep yourself cool in these things?
Right.
That's important.
I think productivity follows. It's a lagging indicator. We all chase it. We all chase it because we want to be productive, right? But I think it's the other way around, right? Like if you are able to keep your head about you. So if you're able to keep your head about you, you will make reasonable decisions. You will not do silly things. You will not waste time on things that, if you're able to be aware, okay, I am just scrolling for no reason, right? Like you will step back and not do that. And then you suddenly have an hour or 2 hours more every day to do more. You will obviously do better than your peers for that reason, right? Personally, I think both of us sort of, for example, lost weight this year, right? Because we're just able to like sort of make these ideas more, articulate them better for ourselves, right? Through the process of writing. We're able to implement it also better for ourselves. For that reason.
Right. In one of the chapters I read, do you think sometimes the act of the activity of organizing itself can get overwhelming and you get too sort of bogged down in making those day-to-day notes?
Absolutely. In fact, I think there's a chapter which talks about not to have to-do lists, to get rid of to-do lists. Because to create a to-do list itself becomes one more activity.
Exactly.
So idea you should be to finish off whatever it is at that point, so there's nothing pending. For example, we have a simple rule that when we have a meeting, we always keep a few minutes between that meeting and the next meeting. And in those minutes, you wrap up any action item of that meeting, which could be sending somebody an email, calling up somebody, or agreeing to meet that person 2 weeks from now, putting it in one's calendar. So the moment you wrap up that activity there and then, you're closing that box, right? So, and at the end of the day, if you have closed all your boxes, then there's no new, the next morning, there's no new, it's all fresh. Life, today is a new day in your life. So I think that's part of that, which is, it's not to create to-do list, but eliminate the concept of to-do list. Just do it on the spot.
Right, but I know. I got that from this thing. I mean, but this whole you say take notes every day. I mean, in the book there's this bit about how Richard Feynman used to sort of have these extensive notes of each day, like just random thoughts. How do you think that process is helpful?
I'll take that, Nandan?
If you take that.
Yeah. So, I'm hoping, and I struggle because I think this is a new idea. So I think communication, I struggle with this on this one, is that, look, the idea of taking notes, right, is essentially just a secret way of you paying deliberate attention to what you're doing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that.
Right. I think people in the online world, it just slowly slipped away. I can always be on a mail, I can always be doing the thing. So why am I doing a separate thing before doing the thing, right? Which is take notes about what I'm doing. Or I'm in the meeting, it will get recorded. Again, Shravanta, you have to transcribe, you have to actually write words. So you are, I'm not pointing fingers, but for most people, they're like, okay, meeting, they're like, I can always come back and go this thing. And therefore they don't be present. And that is like starting condition number 1 for you to step away from what you're supposed to be doing and doing something else. So taking notes, first of all, that whole
it's a way to be present. Yeah,
it's a way to be present more than it is a way to like document. Right? Because the documentation, honestly, we will not visit. 98% of your notes you will never look at again.
True.
I still think you should do it.
True. Yeah. I agree.
And then what happened with the Sharad example in the book?
I saw that. Sharad and Azim Premji's index cards.
Yeah. So the idea that became in the book, and so this is in theory, we can tell you a lot of this and pull out more studies to convince you and do all that. But the idea simply is that if I want to show it to you in action, and in action, what I want to say is that as you start by taking notes, it will look like it's extensive. Why am I writing everything? By the time you finish with the process, you will learn what is worth me noting, what is not worth me noting, what helps me direct my attention, what helps me refresh my memory. But the idea, like Nandan said, is to wrap up in a way that your brain is not thinking about it once it's done.
Right.
Presence.
Yeah.
It really is about presence.
Right. And what are the systems that both of you have for this kind of thing? Like, both of you, did you have similar systems or different systems? Did you integrate them in some way for the purpose of, putting it down in a sort of followable way?
No, as I said, see, at the abstraction level, we have the same systems, but on the implementation level, we use different technologies. So
right.
But all the concepts of curate, communicate, create.
That's your 3 C's. Yeah.
And staying in that context, in zero inbox, not having to do. We all practice. Both of us practice this, but in the actual way we practice, I'm sure there are differences.
In the practical.
No, I can
because at his age, he has to be on social media. All his friends are on social media and all. I don't feel any great pressure to be on social media. The only social media I'm on is Twitter, which I only use to broadcast if I have to send out something. I don't engage.
Yeah.
And so part of calmness is that. But then that is, everybody can't choose that. Therefore, we have to give ways for people to be more effective in that.
Yeah.
So, I'll answer that. I think is how do we integrate our systems? I think, look, once you, So our systems, the obvious differences are like Nandan has a journal, right? He has a notebook, proper notebook. And in every meeting, both of us are always like, he's scribbling, I'm typing, right? Like that is always happening, even though like both of us are listening, paying attention. But if you're not doing that, we're not feeling in control, right? We're not feeling in, at least I can speak for myself and say that I'm not feeling in control of, am I going to miss something or whatever, right? Or something going to be wrong. So that, for example, right? It's the common system if you define the idea of taking notes, not transcribing, but taking a note to every time something important thought comes in or somebody says some commitment, we both write it down. Right? We both don't miss it. System is the same. Tools are very different.
It's just the tools are different. Yeah, the mediums are different.
So why do you want to load your memory with it? If you can write it down, then you're freeing up memory in your brain, no?
Exactly. Yeah.
And the way of the processing, right? Like, because I've seen his notebook also. He doesn't know this, I guess. And I've seen into his notebooks when he's not looking. It's the same idea, right? The stuff that is there, and you can see action that has been done or not done. You go put a little check so that you know that, okay, what I had written down, have I processed it or not, right? Because if you revisit for a bit to just see if everything okay, you feel great at the end of the day. You feel like that box has been closed.
Yeah.
Otherwise, for us, we just had this. I don't know about, but before I did this more intentionally, I just always carried latent stress, right? Like just always carried a feeling of, am I missing something?
Yeah.
Right? And as soon as that goes away, you can just do so much better.
That is such a great point. Yeah, that latent stress is...
The key to being calm is not to have a backlog. The moment you have a backlog, you have stress.
Absolutely. Like, so true.
There's a little section in the book, I don't know if you reached it yet, it's called the nuclear option. Have you seen that?
No,
I do recommend, it's a little bit where the tone changes, where we're a little strict about what we're saying. Where we say that, look, if you think, so we say that, you might collect interesting links, you might see something to see on the internet.
Yeah, all our to-dos, to-reads are like huge.
Your 30 tabs open because one day you will read that article.
Exactly.
Right? So all of that we say, you write it down in one place. And write a small note to yourself when you're writing it down. Like increase friction just a little. Write down a note to yourself. Why am I saving this? Why do I want myself in the future to read it? Write that down. First case, you get a good recommendation list or whatever of things to read about. They're saying, but like the nuclear option is this idea that you get to this some point on a Sunday or whatever, every week. If you've not read it, delete it. If this thought makes you uncomfortable, but how can I close that tab or whatever, then you are exactly the person who needs it.
Right, yeah.
Right? Because if this is like, if you're holding for the sense of holding or for the anxiety of holding, right, then you are exactly the person who needs this, right?
You guys are like the Marie Kondo of digital life.
I mean, clearing up your brain clutter.
Does this spark joy? No, delete.
I think.
I think that there's great value in that idea, and beyond its hype or whatever, the kernel of it is again mindfulness, which is the same as your, the kernel of it. I think it's also like mindfulness, right?
Correct.
Just related to that quickly, anything that you guys learned while writing the book, like, that you thought that, okay, this is a good practice, why haven't I been doing this? Or anything that you kind of picked up on with your, during conversations with other people and stuff?
No, for me, I think the journaling conversation was helpful, because though I was doing it, I was not doing it exactly the way that we are talked about in the book. So that helped me to improve my game there.
Okay.
And also, I think the fact that you can have multiple identities, and because your identity is how people recognize you on the web, and therefore, by having multiple identities, you're able to break it up in a way that you don't show everything to. The whole privacy part of it also was a good learning from my interaction with Tanuj.
Right.
As soon as you asked that question, I was trying to think, and I think one or two of them really stood out to me as conversation people. I was talking to this person, she's 20, she must have been 22 maybe, or 21 at the time. I asked her and sort of, what do you feel about this? What do you feel about that? Very intrusive questions now that I think about it. At one point she said, look, I don't like talking to people online. She said, I said, why? It's like, it never ends, right? Like, you send something, then they're obligated to send a smiley back. And then you're like, you send this, and like, so, you know, I was thinking that, okay, like, I had these stupid ideas of what it means to be like 20 or like teen on the internet right now. And I realized they're actually very thoughtful, very sort of, you know, have created their own sort of culture around.
Oh my God, absolutely. You do not leave people on red. I have a 15-year-old ask me, like,
yeah,
you have to respond. I mean, you have to send a smiley or something, and then the other person has to respond to that. So yeah, it's
correct. So it never ends, right? Like, so they are living under a strain of like social sort of, you know, pressure that we don't even begin to understand. So for me, that was the most surprising thing. Right? That was one. Second most surprising thing, of course, was that, you know, the different ways in which social media, same generation or others who are using social media as, you know, just creating alternate identities and then, you know, being able to express themselves. So I think that brought out another key idea that Nandan is also pointing out, which is that, look, privacy is it's not a binary switch, right? So let's say the conversations we have around today on topics of privacy are like, is this privacy protecting? This is not privacy, right? You know, like, if you use Facebook, it's not privacy, right? Or it's not privacy. But I don't think it's that simple, right? I think it's like Nandan is saying, what facet of yourself are you choosing to share with whom, in what context? And being able to control all of these levers,
right,
meaningfully. That is privacy.
Yeah. So what you are to your closest friends and family, what you are acquaintances, what are you to the world? They're all different.
Correct.
And you can digitally create those profiles of yourself.
And sort of live, you know, that splitting is authentic. It's not inauthentic. It's not like the way the internet did that was, okay, everybody goes online, they show all parts of themselves, like a big boss for everybody. Right? That's not what the internet is supposed to be. That's not how you are supposed to be, right? You walk into a party, you're different. You walk into a library, you're different, right? So those things, really, to see how people actually put it into practice, very surprising what we learn from people. I think the rest of the techniques, or some of it, look, there are stuff in here that you may have read in other productivity kind of book, right? We're not saying that every idea in the book is original. What we're saying is, it's, like you said, coherent, because we're hoping that we get across to people that, you know, there is a sense of calm that you need to chase more than anything else. And then from that, we have some 3 principles that we've outlined in the book, that, you know, these are 3 guiding principles.
Yeah, the mirrors, not windows. Right, yeah.
Yes. And then from the guiding principles are strategies. And then beyond that is, like you said, a continual process and conversation on our social media, etc. You know, how do I specifically deal with this? Can you show me how you take notes? You know, or what software do you use for taking notes? It felt a little out of place in the book. So we didn't include that level of detail.
Right. Yeah, which can be an ongoing conversation. Exactly. I mean, you know, so suppose, say I do a time-wasting activity. Say I play X game on my phone, and I find myself reaching for it, you know, like at least once an hour or whatever. So are you saying that, you know, instead of unconsciously, if I do it consciously, that, you know, okay, now I'm 10 minutes, I'm going to like play this game. You think that is a better approach? I mean, am I understanding it correctly?
I'll take this.
Although I may actually end up spending the equal amount of time.
Yeah. I mean, does that, before I even answer, Shravanti, does that sound like a logical thing to you? Because I mean, what do you think? And then I'll tell you why, specific reasons why we think that, right? Does that make sense to you, or do you see that there's it doesn't connect with your experience?
Yeah, I think if I would do it, if I were to say that 5 minutes I will play, and I mean, you know, if I did it mindfully, I wouldn't probably be reaching out for it as often, and I probably wouldn't end up spending as much time on it.
No, I mean, okay, let me put it this way. Number one, right now you're still doing it, but what you also have is guilt, shame, self-blame.
Yeah.
How is that ever going to get you out of this? Number one, like, that's my first was, if I am so in the pandemic, I'm not ashamed to say this at all. The thing that got me through the pandemic is this YouTube channel which solves Sudoku online. Now you would think solving Sudoku, right, is a very solitary, boring activity. But to this guy who solves it on a screen for everyone to see and talks through it is ridiculously calming for some reason. Okay. Some of his videos have millions of views, 4 million views, because he gets very excited when he finds a great puzzle. Like, you know what I realized I'm seeing is somebody like me who takes genuine joy in solving a puzzle. And to see that even though I am not the one solving the puzzle, it's that for me is that vicarious experience. And
some reward center in the brain sort of gets
is activated, right? Since that
satisfied,
I cannot. He also jokes about it that look, at some point of time, watching a 2-hour video on solving one Sudoku is ridiculous, right? Yeah, I saw your eyebrow.
Sorry.
And I have seen there are 5 or 6 such videos that he has, or 7 videos on his channel, because some of the puzzles are genuinely tough. I have watched all of them. Right, no shame, because I do this.
I'm not judging you. I'm not even going to tell you what I do, what games I play. So, like Candy Crush, okay? It's horrible.
Yeah. But the thing is, it's all of us, and what we've done, and where I think this book is important for that reason, is that all the conversations around screen time and whatever, at some level blame us.
Right, yeah.
Right?
It's always
for guilting yourself and like you need to be stronger or because no man, you need. I recently got a cat. What does the cat do all day? Do you think the cat has any shame about its lifestyle or whatever? No, right? Like, we are just doing this to ourselves. So, first of all, therefore, for that reason, intention alignment. You feel terrible because you were supposed to write an article probably and instead you were on Candy Crush. You're not feeling terrible by being on Candy Crush. Otherwise, you wouldn't be playing Candy Crush, right?
That's true.
So I think that the idea simply is to, like you said, be kinder to yourself. And just focus on the idea that when I intend to do something and instead I put into a game, it's a vicious cycle for the following reason. First, I will lose time. So if I had an hour to write, I will now only have 30 minutes to write because I will waste time. Number one. That puts me under pressure and stress, right? I will do a bad job. I will feel guilty about 2 things now. 1, wasting time. 2, doing a bad job. Right? And then because I'm feeling bad and terrible, I will want to numb myself. How do I do that?
By playing.
Right? And then I do it again.
Right.
There's actually a diagram about this in the book. But
also, recognizing that the whole technology is designed to get your attention. So it's not that just it's designed to get your attention. So you shouldn't feel bad because that's what it's designed for.
Exactly.
And therefore, it's not people and all.
Yeah, and the fact that you get distracted is also not a problem, because if you didn't have the ability to quickly change your focus and look wherever, we would not have survived as a species, right? And that's over millennia, right? So for it to change in a generation because some new technology came out,
that's
also impossible. So you shouldn't feel guilty about the fact that you get distracted,
right?
On the other end, right? And that's the thing, right? I think all polemic, all books that are trying to say, you become somebody whom this device cannot, distract. You become a monk and leave your devices. Who cares? They are also like they're not human in that way. That I feel like I personally do not want to give up the internet.
No, absolutely not.
I just want to when I am on the internet to work, I should be working. When I'm on the internet to learn, I should be learning.
Yeah. And that's the clear purpose of the book, and I think it comes across that you're not saying that ditch the internet. So Nandan, do you have any time wasting habits, or like you?
I play Free Cell. I'm not in Candy Crush. I play Free Cell all the time.
Okay.
And the reason is that I don't want to learn a new game. I want to play a game where I don't have to think. I know how to play this damn game. I keep playing it over and over again. But what I do is I do reward myself in the sense. I say, okay, I'll clear 25 emails and then I'll reward myself with a game of Free Cell. So at least it becomes a reward thing for me.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And can I also say, Shravanti, there is a, I have to say this, is that I think there is a hierarchy that is socially imposed.
Right.
So a lot of people will read Wikipedia articles for hours. Right, to the extent of that Wikipedia article reading is getting in the way of writing an essay or doing whatever.
Yeah.
Right, but intellectually it's been labeled as a better thing to do
better,
than playing
better.
Candy Crush.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Right?
And all of us who are sort of, more sort of, we think we are more high achieving or whatever. We think that, what am I doing? I'm wasting my brain cells or something by doing that.
But honestly, whatever relaxes you, whatever floats your boat, please don't guilt yourself. It will
Right.
only make the problem worse. It's,
right.
If you're really enjoying yourself and doing whatever and you want to make time for it, just figure out a way.
Intentionally.
If your natural state is go play, just figure out a way how to be little more focused and create these systems for yourself so that when you are working, you are not taken away into those. That's all, right? That's what the book specifically tries to target, right? And say, how do you create that environment rather than, there's no hacks in this book. There are systems. Like, I want to say this very clearly, right? This one trick will cut down. No, it won't, right? Like it has to be a coherent system.
Yeah. So like, just we are kind of, wrapping up now, like 2 questions. One, firstly, like related to this, do you think these sort of, timers, the intention timers on your phone, which sort of give you, the time of how much time you've spent on this app, how much time you've done, or, which actually even forcefully sort of shut down, your apps or the browser or whatever, do you think these work? Or, even like focusing techniques like, say, a Pomodoro and stuff like that. That's probably, I think, a little different, but
I hear your question.
Yeah, these digital interventions where, you put another app on your phone to control the other apps and shut them down. Do you think that sort of thing works?
Nandan, do you have
No, you answer this one.
So, can I just admit to you, Shravanti, like with like you're saying, I think as a generation, all of us have, wanted to be high achieving, got the internet early in our lives and struggled with it, and therefore try to do this productivity and whatever, right? So I am one of them, first of all. I am one of those people who has wasted time arguing over which note-taking system is best, which technique is best. So like, let me say, this comes from failing and like trying and failing rather than, right? Now, coming back to your specific questions you asked us, one is the focusing apps and do they work? And the second is some techniques like Pomodoro technique work, right? Let me start with the first one. I think those apps really work. Okay. If you design them, if you put them, sort of integrate them into your life in a way that you don't feel trapped by them or they don't become cumbersome in your life, right? So one simple example is that, let's suppose you block all Twitter and whatever, and then you're reading something for work, some research, and that researcher is, or even nowadays as it happens, like London's important announcements, the Prime Minister's important announcements are tweets. If you just completely block Twitter, you will get in your own way. Then you will remove the block and you will not put it back, right? So what happens is that we all in the internet age look for a quick fix. I'll download this app and install this app and suddenly my problem is solved. You have to be slightly more thoughtful about when you apply that block, how you apply that block. And in the book, I won't give away too much on this part. In the book, there is like the blocking software forms an important part of what we're saying, but we use it in surprising ways. We use it in a way that, your freedom doesn't go away, right? Right. So I think the best way to think about it, it's in the book, also we've written this, is that don't think of them as blocking yourself in. Don't think of it as a jail cell for yourself. It is more like a boundary wall that is keeping everybody else from coming into your sanctum. Right? When you use it as a boundary wall and you think of it that way, I am creating space, it works. When you think of it as a jail cell, it doesn't work. Essentially, that time bomb effect of I only have 25 minutes.
No, I get what you mean. Yeah. No, for me, I don't look at it as I've set myself a 25-minute deadline and ये task मेरे को इस time में finish करना है. I look at it as a focus time. Like, I'm not going to be distracted. I'm going to, 25 minutes.
That's fine. So that's a boundary. You're using a boundary.
You're using a boundary, which is great. But honestly,
anything a boundary, which is a boundary, that's fine. I think.
That's a great way of looking at it. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Last question. Like totally, I think we're almost at the 1 hour mark. So, you said that you don't want to blame big companies, big tech. It's become, it's very easy to blame big tech, but sort of like Google and all have been pushing digital well-being and stuff. They're making those noises, about digital well-being. Do you think that's sincere? Do you think, or is it intrinsically against their, core fundamental this thing to shareholders to not do that?
No, I think it's sincere, but the fundamental model which we talk about in the book, the fact that it's an attention economy, the fact that it's a winner-take-all approach, all these things are what really lead to these issues. So we have to tackle that, which is really what the third part of the book is, that if we create a more competitive economy with many players, then it changes the whole dynamics of the game. And if we can go more towards transactions, which is what payments are and all do, then we are less reliant on advertising as revenue, because advertising leads to attention, leads to all the challenges.
Oh, okay. I think I am still not gone through the third part too well, so I think I will get my answers there for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I think, I agree. I want to just add that it's very sincere. I think it's sincere.
They are sincere.
Who are doing this, and equally sincerely, there are people in the advertising team now working on how do you get around this.
Right.
So,
it's not a whole. I mean, it's not like a,
It's not that Google doesn't intend it or the CEO doesn't have any focus on it, but it's just that you've created a machine which is responsible to so many people, not just like a CEO or some prime objective coming from a Mark Zuckerberg. No, it's just the machine itself is going to move towards getting more people to see ads, right, in subtle ways. And they all add up to lead to where we are. I don't think anybody designed for this world, but it emerged from each person acting in a way that goes to a certain space. That's why we are talking about systemic issues.
Right. Okay. Great. I think that was a good conversation and lovely catching up with both of you. I would have loved to meet up in person since we are all, I think, in Bangalore. But now with Omicron and all, that
post Omicron.
Post Omicron.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, Shravanti.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye, Nandan. Bye, Tanush.